Hey guys, this video is a little Halloween special. I really like horror games, so this is the perfect excuse to talk about creepy games I played recently. Oh, and this is a little late, but thank you for making me get over 1,000 subs. It still feels so unreal to have that many people follow my channel. Thanks again, and I hope I'll continue to upload more videos that you'll enjoy. And now, let's start with the first spooky game. First off is White Day, a labyrinth named School. Now I've been fascinated with this game for a long time. The PC version that I played was actually released in 2017, and it's a remake of a much older game from 2001. I played the original back in high school, and I thought it was incredibly scary. It's kind of an obscure title, but the reason why I played the first game back then is because of Amnesia: The Dark Descent. I read that White Day inspired that game, but take it with a grain of salt because I still don't know if that's true. Anyway, I was fascinated at how the game was extremely similar to Amnesia, despite it being released around 9 years before The Dark Descent came out. It had similar mechanics, like there was no combat in the game, so you had to always hide and figure out how to get past enemies that are stalking you. Now in White Day, you play as a boy who sneaks into his school at night so he can return his crush's diary and leave his White Day gift for her. For those that don't know, White Day is celebrated in South Korea and other East Asian countries. It's similar to Valentine's Day, except it takes place 1 month after that, and guys have to give girls chocolate on that day. So yeah, continuing the story, shortly after the protagonist gets into his school, he meets a few classmates and he finds out that the janitor has gone crazy. What's worse is he's also trapped in the campus, so you'll be looking for a way out while uncovering all the mysteries that surround his school. As you explore each hallway and classroom, you'll come across various items and documents that give you a glimpse of the school's history. One thing to remember is that while White Day is a remake, it's very much an old-school horror game, and it's also flawed. Like, you can't even explore the school freely because the janitor's almost always searching for you, so you'll spend a lot of time outrunning him or hiding in corners. It's scary at first, but it eventually becomes frustrating. What's worse is that the puzzles range in quality. Some are easy while others are really vague, and it can be frustrating when you're racing against the clock. I know I'm complaining about the gameplay a lot, but I do like this game. And I don't think it's nostalgia talking as well, because the original was one of the most memorable horror games that I've played. The soundtrack alone still makes my skin crawl. I was glad that the remake managed to keep the spirit. Oh, and speaking about spirits, one of the best things about White Day is the ghosts. I don't want to spoil anything, but let's just say that there are a number of ghosts that haunt the school, and they leave quite an impression. So yeah, I think that White Day is a good game to play if you like old school horror games. The next games that I want to talk about are Distraint 1 and 2. I played the first Distraint game a few years back, but I only finished Distraint 2 recently. I was originally only going to talk about the second game, but I thought it would be kinda difficult since it's a direct sequel to the first. But I enjoyed both games anyway, so I figured it would be fun to talk a little about them. So Distraint 1 and 2 are short story-driven games. The first Distraint game is about Price, a man who evicts people from their homes. It starts off as a job for him, but as the game goes on, he starts to wonder whether he's doing the right thing. As for Distraint 2, it takes place after the events of the first game, which is spoiler territory, so I won't get into that. Both games are side-scrollers that play like point-and-click games, so you'll be interacting with items and people. They also have this creepy, cartoony pixel art style that works well with the music and ambience. So yeah, gameplay-wise, there's nothing much I can say, but the reason why Distraint 1 and 2 left an impression on me is because they don't rely on cheap jump scares all the time. Both games focus more on psychological horror, and the games were kinda emotional at times. Price goes through events that make him do some self-reflection in the games. It makes for a more moving experience since you get to have a deeper connection with him. If you want 2 short games that'll creep you out and make you feel things, I recommend checking out Distraint 1 and 2. The third one is Spirit Hunter Deathmark. In this game, you play as a man with amnesia who receives a weird mark on his wrist. He then finds out that anyone who gets that mark will die shortly after it appears, so he starts looking for a way to get rid of it. He ends up meeting other people in the same situation, so he teams up with them so that they can find a way to survive. The game is split into multiple chapters, which kinda feel like episodes. Each one has its own story and characters, but they're all somewhat connected. For a visual novel, Deathmark has more gameplay than other titles from the same genre. It plays kinda like a point-and-click game combined with an old-school dungeon crawler, so apart from clicking on shiny objects on the screen, you'll be moving in 4 different directions, which are visible on the minimap. I honestly thought that the dungeon crawling aspect was an odd choice for a game like this, but it worked well, and I thought it made the game more unique. Deathmark has great art and ambience, so it felt nerve-wracking to move from one tile to the other. But there is one thing that I didn't like about this game. A lot of times, progressing through Deathmark requires very specific steps. Like, you need to use certain items in order, or perform actions exactly the way the game wants you to do it. This got frustrating early on because I was really engaged in the story. I ended up following a walkthrough for the rest of the game because it made me enjoy my experience more. So yeah, as much as I love Deathmark, I'm not sure if I can recommend it to everyone, unless you already like visual novels, and you don't mind getting frustrated with the gameplay sometimes. Next, I'll talk about Yearwalk. I've wanted to play this for so long, but I've just been putting it off. The game tells the story of a man who goes on a yearwalk, a practice that is done to see the future. It's a surreal game that focuses on Swedish folklore, and it does it extremely well. The gameplay takes some time to get used to though, since you'll be moving the camera from left to right while going back and forth to go to the next area. It feels kinda experimental, honestly, and I had no idea what was happening throughout most of my playthrough, but I was really absorbed by the game. I want to be as vague as possible because Yearwalk really is one of a kind. Like, the original game came out in 2013, but it still felt fresh when I played it. That's all I can say because the game is also really short. I think I ended up finishing it in about an hour and a half. But yeah, I highly recommend Yearwalk if you want to play something really interesting. Okay, now I'll talk about Stigmatized property and the convenience store. I watched some of John Wolf's Let's Plays on Chilla's Art Games last year, so I got 2 of their games, but I never actually talked about my experience with both titles, at least until this video happened. So I played both games again to record a bit of gameplay and to refresh my memories. The first one I replayed is Stigmatized Property. You'll have to go to an apartment building with cheap rent, which sounds like a steal, but you'll know soon enough why it's so cheap in the first place. It's basically like a walking simulator where you solve puzzles and learn the story of the previous tenant. I think I finished this game in about less than an hour when I first played it. So yeah, it's a great game to play on a free evening. The graphics have a retro feel to it, and the ambient sounds make the game even more eerie. Like, sometimes it sounds like there's someone walking right behind you. I recommend this game if you want to feel uncomfortable. Now, in the convenience store, you play as a college girl who's working a night shift at, you guessed it, a convenience store. It probably sounds very ordinary, but things get really weird. Just like Stigmatized Property, it has a retro VHS look to it, and the game takes about an hour to play. You'll be doing normal things like checking out items, disposing of expired products, and watching the CCTV camera. So yeah, super normal. It's rare to find a horror game that takes place in a brightly lit space, which is probably why the game left such an impression on me. I recommend this game if you want to see what it's like to have creepy stuff happen in a convenience store. The final game I'll be talking about is Bloodborne. I'm making a full video on the game, so this is just a little teaser. In Bloodborne, you play as a hunter who's trying to find the source of a strange illness that's spreading throughout the city of Yharnam. If you're into the Dark Souls games, then you've probably heard of Bloodborne. I personally never got into the series because they're way too hard. I tried Dark Souls 1 years ago, but I kept dying, so I just quit the game. For Bloodborne, I played a little bit of the game years ago, but again, the difficulty got to me. I don't know what changed. Maybe I changed, because when I picked up the game recently, I couldn't stop playing. Like, I was completely immersed in the game, and surprise, I didn't quit. I don't know if I would even classify this as a scary game, actually. I mean, it has scary moments, but I find the game more fascinating, if anything. There's so much to love about it, from the setting, lore, enemies, and bosses. The gameplay is also really good. There's like a weapon for every playstyle, and there's so much to discover. I had a lot of fun going around Yarnum and dying every 5 minutes. So yes, Bloodborne. I hope you look forward to my video on it once it's done. Let me know what you thought about the video. I'm really happy that I got to make this. I've wanted to do something seasonal for a while now, but being in university for the past few years was eating both my time and mental energy. I hope I can do more stuff like this from now on. It'll be fun. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.